My Uncle Bob once sent me a video to this exhibition in northern Germany, and I like to draw a lot of inspiration from it. It's called the Miniature Wonderland. It's actually the biggest railway model set in the world. It was started by twin brothers Frederick and Garrett Braun. It boasts over 930 trains, over 14,000 carriages, 335,000 lights, 228,000 trees, and 215,000 human figurines, at least as of 2016. They have been able to simulate traffic on the roads, houses on fire, and even airplanes taking off of a runway. Now, obviously, a project of this scale is going to have some problems every now and again, but for the most part, it ignites the imagination. And that's what matters. This can be applied to anything: hard work, team collaboration, and sheer passion. Body doubling has been brought up and advanced by lookalikes and stunt doubles and amazing choreography. The more that we practice with body doubling, the more convincing that we can make acting in films that have multiple clones of the actors. Same thing with miming. Acting with forces that aren't actually there, imaginary forces, and making them come to life. We can fine-tune pieces of footage by rotoscoping or animating frame by frame the layer masks or other elements that we need to animate. And the animation usually requires a team of people anyway. All of these different elements help to create optical illusions in film that have been around since Georges Méliès back in the early days of cinema, early French cinematographer, who is responsible for creating special effects and amazing films such as Cinderella, A Journey to the Moon, and The Impossible Voyage. In these movies, he implemented a number of special effects right out of the gate. Things like crossfades, different kinds of cuts, time-lapse photography. And ever since then, people have been intrigued by special effects and have always wanted to try to make their imagination come true by using special effects. And I've done that with layer masks. I've done that in darkness with the seamlessness. I've done that with timing, choreography, cues, and body doubling. I've done that with rotoscoping. I've worked really hard to get to where I am now. I don't think there's any one way that you can absolutely perfect a technique like this. I don't think that's ever possible. But what I do know is possible is that you can always get better. For instance, that glide track shot that I tried to do, where we were moving the camera too slowly, but we didn't have enough length in the glide track to really move it as drastically as we wanted it to. And actually, some of the longest glide tracks on the market only go from about 3 to 6.5 feet, and that's a problem. We weren't in the position to engineer new kinds of glide tracks at the time, but that is something that I'm considering doing in the future. I'd like to see almost like a building set. And you could technically make a glide track where you could keep extending it. You could keep adding more parts to it. They all have a bunch of little legs. And I would put it on the floor. I'd keep it as close to the floor as I can possibly get it. We had a yardstick taped onto the glide track, in the glide track, so that we could tell where not to go beyond. Because at one point, if the camera is all the way back on the glide track, you can actually see the end of the glide track. I kept moving the camera to a point until you couldn't see it anymore. And so I moved it another half an inch over and taped a yardstick there, and that was the safe point. That is a factor. And what I would do is I'd have the glide track by the floor, and I would have a tripod standing up from the glide track with the camera on top of that. So you have a bunch of little feet holding up the glide track across, and a bunch of extendable parts. So you could make it longer, and you can make it as long as you needed it to be, before you see the other end, of course. If you were outside and you were dealing with all those different parts, it would help to actually put this on a platform. That way it's really smooth for all the different parts, and that the legs aren't like not touching the ground in some places. What's amazing about this is I don't know how well that would work out. I don't know how stable that kind of product would be. I don't know how much footage we would get before we see the end of the glide track again. I'm not even sure if you move it, you would actually get a smooth shot. If maybe each time you go over another extendable piece, there's like a little click or a bump. I'm not sure yet. But this is something that I would want to try. You could also automate motion. They have servo motors that can automate same speed for the camera each time. I would like to take advantage of that. I would like to do something where you can make it smooth. So it doesn't go at one speed, but the servo motor actually gradually speeds up and gradually slows down. I'm sure there are ways to do that. Combining servo motors that can speed up gradually and slow down gradually and maintain automated motion on a glide track that can be custom extended to be whatever length you want it to be, I think that would be amazing. That would bring about so many possibilities if it did work out. Another way of automating motion in a different contour, so to speak, would be telescope motors. I was looking at equatorial mounts for telescopes. Equatorial mounts are very interesting. Stargazers like to use equatorial mounts for their telescopes. One of the directions that the camera can turn is what goes along the line that's called right ascension. That means that it follows the Earth's rotation, the stars orbiting around in the sky. Obviously, the Polaris is in the middle. The point of an equatorial mount is, instead of what's called an altazimuth mount, and you have to readjust your telescope on the X and Y axes just to follow the star that you were trying to capture. You just have to turn one knob, and it will follow the line of right ascension, which is the path that the star will naturally take. And if you deviate from that, if you turn the other knob on an equatorial mount, that's called a descension. That's different. That's for if you want to find a different star. Equatorial mounts have what are called AV motors. Those motors can automate the process for you, so you don't have to do it manually. It does it for you. Those can turn the camera itself into those axes. But that's not what we want. That's an equatorial mount. What we want is an altazimuth mount, which is actually what standard tripod heads are. There is their altazimuth mount, the X and Y. That's what we would want. There are such things as altazimuth motor drives, and those would be perfect. If it might be possible to engineer those too, to have them gradually start up and gradually slow down, and give them a little more oomph in their speed. They could also, like the glide track, pull off motion in those regards and keep it smooth. Things like that, trying to pull off different kinds of movements for the camera. At some point, you come up with a solution for just about any kind of camera movement that you want to make. And of course, we can't forget about the magic of Adobe After Effects. Adobe After Effects is capable of detecting the overall movement in a shot and recording that. And you can actually apply that movement to other elements that you can put in there, which could include text, animated objects, or even other people in the same shot. If you combine all of these elements together, you can make some really amazing things. But one of these days, I want to be able to replicate a crane shot, a long crane shot, where the camera is moving on the X and Y axes. There might be some glide track action, maybe the camera is moving up and down through some other automated process, who knows? And everything is smooth. And we can fit hundreds of the same actor and paint the landscape, the city of fictional people. All of them are a straightened version of someone's mind. Maybe put some music on that too. Maybe it's a music video. Maybe it's a musical. Who knows? Let's just do that. And the footage itself, that one shot, maybe it's a minute long, maybe it's 3 minutes long. Maybe it's the longest crane shot there ever was. Maybe it's possible. With green screening, chroma key, visual effects, Adobe After Effects, rotoscoping, body doubling, automated motion. We ourselves are our own worst critics. I like to think that advice is very true. We're very hard on ourselves. I look back at my footage and I'm an absolute perfectionist. I have to make sure everything is just right. And if I see something wrong, I start to not like it anymore. If I actually go ahead and try to fix it, I start to like it again. But we have to realize that the things that we do and the hard work that we put into them sell it enough. And even if we lose, as long as we learn from our mistakes, we always win in the end. I like this technique. I want to see other people try this technique. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful form of art and expression. Learning these kinds of things is all about trial and error. We keep trying and trying and trying until we reach ZZZQB. And finally, we come out with something that is truly remarkable and suddenly makes all those other failed attempts worth it. Thomas Edison failed hundreds of times to make the light bulb. Okay, and look now. I'm being lit up by the softbox light over here. Can you see that? That's really cool. Yeah. So don't give up on your dreams. Keep trying things. I hope that this video has at least helped to shed some light on this technique and other ways to make it happen. And I hope it's inspired you to go out there and try all the crazy Pinteresty kind of stuff that you can think of. The sky is the limit. And then when you go above that, you're breaking the limit. And guess what? There's more out there. Thank you for watching and have fun creating.